What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam. Have you ever felt like you're trying to do a billion things at once and more new things are showing up faster than you can get things done? Don't fall into the trap of feeling overwhelmed and letting each new task rock your boat. Instead, use the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers to find the most important thing you should be spending your time on. You'll get the most out of this jam by watching the video and following along with us at home. Get ready to get organized and de-stressed. What is up? Welcome to Etsy Jam, the show where we have grazing conversations about serious topics. I am Gordon from Marmalead.
And I am Richie from Marmalead. And if you have not yet heard of Marmalead, Marmalead is the best Etsy SEO and market research tool for serious sellers. So if you are a serious seller and you haven't heard of Marmalead, you've got to go check it out right now. And that is marmalead.com. Go check it out. We have a ton of great content on there, as well as awesome tools and an awesome community. And it's what allows Gordon and I to do Etsy Jams, because we do Marmalead full time.
I love that you always spell that. That makes me very happy every time you launch into spelling it.
I only do that because I know you love
it. Otherwise, no spelling.
Exactly.
All right. Well, today we've got a sweet topic for you guys. It's kind of an interactive thing, something you can do at home as you follow along with us, if you so choose. We are going to be talking about the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Marmalade.
Yeah.
So, the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers. That was a tough one to say. I can spell marmalade, but apparently I can't say that one.
Q-U-A-D.
Yeah. Don't ask me to distinguish between bear and beer either. That's a tough one. Just in case you guys want to know my weaknesses. But why would you want to use this crazy Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers? Well, it solves the problem of I'm so busy, how do I know if I'm doing the right things? Because that's really what it's all about, is doing the right things, not more things. And that's where
that's a common thing. That's yeah.
Absolutely. It's not just you. Everybody has that problem.
So yeah, that's what it's going to help you. You're feeling overwhelmed. You've got a bunch of things going on. Enter, like Richie was saying, the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers. So how does this whole thing work? It sounds very magical and mysterious, almost like a Magic 8-Ball or a Ouija board.
Or a unicorn.
Or a unicorn, yeah. It's a bit more scientific than that, but it will give you answers. That's kind of the cool thing about it. So how does it work? All right, so we've broken this down here into it's 5 simple steps. A couple of them you have to repeat, but 5 easy steps. The first step that you need when you start this process is to have a goal. You need to make sure that everything you're working towards, everything that you're working on, you can only say, how relevant that is or how important that is for you to work on it if you constantly look back at a single goal, and if it ties back into this goal that you're trying to move toward. So, for the sake of simplicity today, we have decided that our goal will be, hypothetically, to increase sales in our Etsy shop. And that's the goal that we will be using as we move through this process with you guys.
Seems like a pretty reasonable goal. All right. And then let's talk about the next step, step 2. Well, you need to have some tasks. You have to have some ideas of what you're going to do to reach that goal. Okay, so I have a goal, but what am I going to do to get there? What am I willing to do to get there? What ideas do I have? Because all tasks aren't created equal, right? Some are going to be worth doing, and some aren't going to be worth doing. Some you can do easier, and some you can't do so easy. And that's where these next steps are really going to come into play.
Yep. And this is a perfect opportunity. Like, if you are one of those people that is constantly asking yourself that question of like, am I doing the right things? I am so busy. I've got so much going on. This is a perfect opportunity to take all those things and just write down your big old list. Put them all on separate sticky notes. Is usually how Richie and I like to do this.
And if you haven't,
we have a bunch of ideas.
Oh, absolutely. And if you haven't asked yourself, I'm really busy all the time. I'm getting a ton of stuff done. And you haven't asked yourself, am I doing the right things though? You got to ask yourself that. You really, really, really got to ask yourself that. It's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying to help you answer that question, because that is not an easy question to kind of go at your own. There's a lot of times where I get caught up working on things that, seem like it's super duper important that I really need to be working on it. But when I take a step back and I'm like, whoa, hey, hold on here. I really don't need to be spending my time on this right now. It's really not going to get me very far. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with this. So step 3, after you've got your massive list of tasks or things to be potentially working on, the next step is to go through each of those things. And for each of them, you are going to give it a score on whether or not you can do it. The can I do it score. So I'm going to take one of my sticky notes off of my list, and I'm going to score it from 0 to 5 and say, can I do this? If it's a 5, absolutely, I can do it like really easily. It's super simple. I could have it done in like 5 minutes if I wanted to. 0, oh boy, this is really difficult. It's going to take me a long time. It's something I'm probably going to need to get help with. I'm going to need to spend a bunch of time, learning about this before I can get moving on it, or it's really tedious. It's going to take forever. So you're going to go through each one of your tasks, and you're going to score them using the numbers 0 through 5, meaning like, okay, how easy is this to get done? Can I do this?
And you just said something really important there that I want to touch on also. You said like really tedious and just kind of drag on, which I think is really important too, because some things aren't that difficult, but if they're super tedious and they just kill your motivation for the other things you have to do, you have to be really aware of those things too. So chances are, like myself, many of you listeners probably aren't huge fans of like accounting work, right? That's why you're not accountants. Maybe some of you are, but the ones who aren't accountants, that's probably something that you hate doing. And you know that by the time you're done with that, you don't feel like doing any of the other stuff, right? So if there are things that maybe it's not that difficult to do, but it just drains you, keep that in mind because it kind of ruins the rest of your day. All right, step 4. Okay, the will it help? So now there's the can I do this, and how easily can I do this? Well, then there's also, great, you can do this, but is it worth doing? Is it going to help? And how much is going to help? So again, you have this 0 to 5. 0, yeah, I already said I could do it, but if I do it, what's the value of it? Very, very little at a 0. Or 5, huge value, absolutely, tons of value if I can pull this thing off.
So now we've got hopefully a stack of sticky notes or a long list of tasks written down on a piece of paper with 2 numbers next to each one of them. One showing us how easy it is for us to do it, and another number showing us how much value we're going to get from it. And then the next, perhaps hopefully logical step, is to graph those things up. We're going to lay them all out, and you can do this on a whiteboard. You can do it just on a wall if you're using sticky notes, whatever they'll stick to. You can throw them up on a window, all kinds of different things. So this is where it starts to get fun. You're going to go ahead and lay these things out on a wall. And so that's step 5 is graph these things up.
Absolutely. And one other thing, I keep interjecting these little things, but don't get too committed to these numbers quite yet. Okay.
Yeah.
The numbers that you put down there right now, they're not set in stone. It's just you doing this. It's okay to change your mind as you start to see them stack up against other things, especially when you're doing the first cards. And sometimes you're like, oh, this is a great idea. This is so easy. And then or so hard. Either one. And then you start seeing the other ones. And once you see them relative to each other, you're like, oh, maybe that wasn't like quite a 4 anyway. And that's okay.
Yes,
that's normal. It's part of the process.
Absolutely.
All right. So when you're graphing this thing up, again, it's just a very fluid process, and that's why you throw it up on the board anyway, and it's going to help a ton. All right.
Now we should mention too, I forgot to do this at the top of the show, but we should mention too, for anybody who's listening to the audio version of this, in the YouTube version, we're going to have a bunch of slides where we're actually illustrating this whole process and showing how this works. And we're going to have, our graph there, and we're going to throw some things out in different spots so you can actually see what's going on. We'll do our best to describe that kind of as we're going through the process. But if you want to get the full impact, or if you, after listening to this on your way home, decide this is something you want to do, and kind of go through your giant to-do list that you might have in the back of your mind or wherever you keep it, feel free to pull up the YouTube version and get a better idea of how this actually works and gets laid out.
Absolutely. This is definitely a good one to actually watch if you're normally a listener. All right, so we're going to jump right into the putting our virtual sticky notes on our graph.
Well, let's set up our axes first.
Oh, okay.
So before we even get into that, go ahead and grab your wall space or your whiteboard or whatever, And when Richie and I do this, it helps if you're using a whiteboard. Just draw your XY, your lines, the big old plus sign looking thing on your whiteboard.
A vertical line and a
And
horizontal line.
if you're there you go. And if you're using a wall, painter's tape works really well on that surface too. So go ahead and just throw up some tape on the wall so that you kind of have your frame of reference of where these things fit on each scale. And your vertical axis is going to be your can I do it axis. So the easier something is to do, the higher up on the wall or on your board you're going to put that sticky note. And the harder it is for you to do it, the lower, the farther down on the wall or on the board you're going to put that card. And then the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is going to be your will it help axis. And if something is super helpful, you think you're going to get a lot of sales from it, that going back to our goal, that's what our goal was, is to increase our sales in our Etsy shop. So we want to know, with regards to that, how much our ideas are going to help or how much our tasks are going to help us accomplish that. So if we think it has a really good chance of helping, it's going to go further to the right. And if we're honest with ourselves about some of these things and we think they're really not going to help that much, that's okay, but they're going to go toward the left side of your wall or your board.
There you go.
So yeah, now let's jump into it. So the first one is start a blog. All right, so start a blog here. Let's first look at all of these that we picked. There's 7 of them here. These are just examples, and they're all going to be different for each one of you who is doing this. So we're going to kind of talk ourselves through these things, given a certain situation, of the things that you're going to want to consider and how you might want to position these things on your board. So starting a blog. In this example, let's say that, we're not super familiar with starting a blog. I've never done that before. It's something I've heard other people talk about. I really have never done that. I know that I'm going to need to get hosting somewhere. I'm going to need to find something that's going to run my blog. I'm going to need to buy a domain name to point to my blog. I'm going to need to start writing content for it. There's a whole lot of learning I'm going to have to do. So as far as can I do it? Well, yeah, but it's going to be really difficult. So I'm actually scoring that one as a 0 because it's super duper. There's so many different steps that are going to go into this. And yeah, there's guides and stuff like that out there that can help me. But it's still going to take me a lot of time to go through and watch those videos and read that material and actually take the steps and do it myself. So as far as can I do it, I'm going to give this a really low score for me personally. Now, if there's other people out there that are bloggers, maybe you've got 4 blogs already, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to get going on something like this. But in our example, I'm going to give it a 0 because there's a lot to it and a lot to learn. So he's going to go down towards the bottom because that's where we're putting the things that are hard for us to do. Now, the other thing is what kind of impact is this going to have on my sales? Now, if I'm honest with myself, just starting out a blog, content marketing is a really long game. You kind of have to do it for a long time before you start to build up a really good audience. So I'm going to be looking at returns on this maybe a year or 2 years out, depending on how much activity and how much work I put into this, how much I blog and how much traffic I get. And even then, the people that are going to my blog are probably going there to read my articles, not necessarily make a purchase from my shop. So if I'm honest, it's probably not going to have that great of an impact. So I'm going to give this guy a 0 also for impact on amount of sales. Now that puts him at the very bottom left of my graph, which is cool. As I'm going through these other cards, we can always adjust things later, but my gut tells me that that's where it belongs.
Yeah, keep in mind that every business is going to be different, and some are going to benefit more depending on what the profile of your customer is, right? So if you're selling wedding stuff, that's the type of thing where a customer or potential customers are they're in a long game anyway, right? They plan this thing for months or years in advance, and they save a ton of articles. And people, every time someone reads an article that's related to a wedding, they're sending it over to them, right? So there's a lot of content about it, but there's also a lot of content consumption about it. So every one of your businesses is going to be a little bit different on that. So you might say, hey, I actually think a blog is a great opportunity. You guys are wrong. Well, for your business, we might be wrong, but for the shop that we're thinking about here is not one where you're going to do a whole lot of reading about it ahead of time. So,
yep, good point.
Yeah, it's all relative. All right. So there we got the blog. Now, guest blog. That's a little bit different. So blog would be, owning your own domain and the content and being, responsible for the creation of it and curation of it and all that fun stuff. Guest blogging would be doing a guest post on someone else's blog. So that's a little bit different. Different strategy and different set of responsibilities. You don't have to worry about keeping something up and running. You can, write an article, and then once it gets posted, they're responsible for that part, which is nice. But regardless, it's one of those things that we'll start thinking about it. Okay, guest blog. How difficult is this going to be? Well, it kind of depends on what your level of aptitude is for writing. Maybe unlike the starting a blog where you had to do a lot of the what am I doing with domain and hosting and all this other stuff, technical stuff. Maybe you're a really strong writer, but the technical part is your weak part. Guest blogging might work out really well. But then again, if you're not that strong of a writer and you don't have that much time because you're really busy producing stuff, then it's not going to be real far on the can I do it. And then for us, where are we going to put this thing? We're going to put it as a 4. All right. So apparently,
yeah, pretty easy to get going. Probably for most people, it really just involves writing. Other people are going to have their blogs already set up. You don't have to worry about hosting. You don't have to worry about domain name registration. You don't have to worry about setting up the actual software. Any of that stuff that's already done. You're just going to need to be able to write, and you're going to need to be able to find a good blog as a candidate that will let you guest post and that has the kind of audience that's in line with your goal of pulling people over and getting sales from your shop.
Yes. So if you're good at writing and good at networking, it's 4. All right. And then how much is going to help them? So I feel like we kind of already anchored our position on content marketing and how well it's going to work with the start a blog one. So it looks like we're going to give this one about a 1 as far as will it help. Because in our situation, for this Etsy shop, we're just not thinking that content consumption is really going to help sales all that much. The customer's not really doing a lot of research prior to buying. We're getting real excited about reading articles about it. Silver starfish necklaces, that is.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that gets thrown where on our quadrant there?
All right. So we are looking at a 4 for, can we do it? And a 1 for will it help?
Yep.
So
Sounds
we can do it, but it's not going to be overly helpful to us.
Yep. And then next up we have promoted listings. So in our fictional situation here, let's pretend that we are very diligent shop owners and we've done a really good job with our SEO because we know SEO is super important. And so our listings are teed up pretty well and we're ranking pretty well for different terms. But we just kind of want to throw some more fuel on the fire, and promoted listings could be a really good way to do that. So let's think about how easy it would be to do promoted listings. Etsy really does a good job of making it easy to turn these things on and off. You don't really have to configure a whole lot of stuff compared to, say, like AdWords or Facebook ads or anything like that. You can kind of just run in there and say, like, yeah, I want to promote these listings. And it's pretty easy to do, especially compared to something like starting a blog. And it's probably even easier than guest blogging and having to find a blog to post on and writing the actual articles. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for, yeah, I can totally do this. It's going to be really easy. I can probably do it in about 5 minutes. So he's going to go way towards the top of my graph. And as far as impact, this could be harder to gauge because, there's a lot of mixed things out there. Some people say that promoted listings are amazing and they swear by them. They always run them on their listings no matter what. And there's other people that say, yeah, I tried that and it really didn't do anything. Well, my gut tells me that the promoted listing success is really based on SEO and which keywords I'm already setting up to rank for. So the people who might not have picked the best keywords on their listings probably aren't getting the best return on their promoted listings. And people who are set up with better keywords already, and I think that I am one of those people, are probably going to get better returns on this. So I'm kind of optimistic on how well this is going to perform. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5 on will it help me. I really think that, if I turn these things on and I throw some money at it, there's a really good chance that I'm going to do better than the amount of money that I'm spending on the ads. So, as long as I'm making more money than I'm spending, that's a good situation there. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4 out of 5 on perceived, or on how much I think it's going to help me towards my goal of getting more sales. So that's going to put this guy in the top right quadrants. The first one we have up over there. It's the highest as far as ease of doing it. And it's pretty high up there too, as far as impact that I think it's going to have, as far as how much it's going to move the needle and get me some more sales in my shop.
Well, that sounds good to me. All right.
Should be a good one.
The next one, Google Ads, however. So, like you just mentioned, that one's a little bit more difficult to set up. It's not on the Etsy platform, right? You're talking about Google. Whereas someone is searching on Etsy and cruising around on Etsy is definitely in the shopping store right there. Like Etsy is for shopping. Then you're not looking for content. You're not looking for hey, how do I make this thing myself or something like that. Google, on the other hand, you are doing that kind of thing. You're looking for just kind of browsing around. Who knows what you're looking for? And there's a lot of just kind of crazy competition out there in the AdWords. I say crazy, not like super high, which it is, but at the same time, you just kind of see like weird stuff pop up too, which makes it a little bit different and a whole different platform to use. There's different approval processes for ads. Probably, just you have to write different copy for it. It's a whole different ballgame. So we're going to put that as a 3 on doability because it's a new thing to learn. It's maybe not on par with what you have to do with starting a blog, but it's also out of the comfort zone and is going to take definitely the focus off of other things that we're doing. Then as far as will it work? Well, if we have the customer pretty dialed in and we have good conversion rates, so we have great photos, we have great descriptions, we have a product and price that the customer is really into, well, throwing more traffic at those listings should bring us more sales and at a good return. We hope, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll give this a 1. Let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3. We'll give it a 3 for will it help.
And next up, we have social media. So you can see now, as we're kind of doing these things, they're starting to really fill out on our graph here. And it becomes easier to kind of start comparing them with one another and saying like, oh, well, this is easier than that, so it should be higher than that. This one's harder. Let me put it down here below this one, maybe above this other one here. And that's a kind of a good strategy to use when you're starting to lay these things out on your Magic Quadrantilizer. So next up, we've got social media here. How easy is it for me to do it? There's certain social media platforms I'm pretty comfortable on, like I do a lot of stuff on Twitter and Facebook, so that's cool. But I also recognize those aren't the only opportunities for social media out there. There's Pinterest, there's Instagram, there's Snapchat, there's a whole slew of different social media platforms, and the list changes almost every month, it seems. So if I really want to attack this, I am going to need to put in a little bit of work and figure out, what's the best way of putting myself out there on different platforms. The stuff that I share on Instagram is going to be different than the stuff that I share on Facebook. And, even Pinterest is going to be a little bit different too for what the audience is actually interested in. So I'm going to need to take a little bit of time to figure out, what exactly works well on each of the platforms that I want to target. But it's also not super challenging, right? I'm pretty comfortable in Photoshop or Canva or, whatever other image editing tool that I want to use. So it's not going to be too bad there. I'm pretty confident I can put together some appealing posts. So I'm going to give this a 3 on can I do it? Because it's not going to be terrible, right? And in fact, I'm already pretty comfortable on Twitter and Facebook, but there's still some unknowns of the other social media networks out there, and I actually need to figure out even which ones I want to spend my time on to begin with. So there's a little bit of homework I'm going to have to do before I really jump into this. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3 out of 5 and say, yeah, overall, I think it's something that I could do pretty easily. Now, impact. Again, kind of like promoted listings, this could be a little tough to anticipate, engage, and say like, how much is this really going to help me out in my shop? Now, I know that I haven't heard a lot of success stories from other sellers that have been talking about how much social media just totally blew up their sales. So that makes me feel like it's probably not going to be that impactful. But I also know that other sellers probably aren't doing it the best possible way that they can. Maybe they're just kind of like tweeting out links to their products on Twitter, and hoping for the best. But I know that if I really want to do it right, that's not the right way. So that's going to be a tougher one to gauge here as far as how much it's going to actually help my sales. Now, when I talk to other sellers who are successful on social media and they do share what percentage of their views is coming from social versus organic search inside of Etsy or ads or anything like that, it's usually a pretty low percentage. So my gut is telling me that this isn't going to have the biggest possible impact. I'm thinking either a 0 or a 1. Maybe that's a little pessimistic, but that's kind of how I'm feeling on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and slot this guy in at the far left of my graph, about in the middle, just a little bit above the middle, for where social media kind of fits in relation to everything else. Now, I should stipulate too that this is going to be different for everybody too. Some people might have fantastic engagement on social media. Maybe you already have a fantastic audience already built up somewhere, and they all happen to be wanting to make purchases while they're on their social media platform of choice. So, results can vary here. We're just kind of trying to talk through these things, as to how they might fit in our fictional world of our mind. So that's where I would put that guy.
Yeah, I like that you said there. Like doing the social media correctly, because that goes with any of these things too, right? Like, could it be really easy to start a blog that's not any good? Well, yeah, you can do that. You can go over to Blogspot, put zero effort into it whatsoever, not buy a domain name, not do any of that stuff, and just, hey, I have a website, I have a blog. Okay, great, but that's not really going to help you. So when we're doing these, when we're scoring these, we're considering social media. How hard is it to do a tweet? Well, a tweet is not hard at all, but to do it well, to actually
Yeah.
put care and effort and do these things correctly, well, that's where it becomes more difficult. So I just think
Yep.
that's a really important
And
detail.
when we're saying do it correctly too, not only are we considering audience, but for something like a tweet, there is a whole slew of data out there that different people have put together that talk about when the best day of the week to tweet is, when the best time of day to tweet is, how long your tweets should be. Yeah, they give you 160 characters or whatever, but you don't necessarily want to always use them all. If you have a link in your tweet, how far into your tweet should the link be? Should it be right at the beginning or at the end? Should you have a picture with your tweet? Like, all of this stuff people have measured. And so if you want to attack something, you should probably take the time to do a bit of research and figure out all that kind of stuff. And every platform is going to be different too.
Absolutely. Yep, that's very good information. All right, what is the next one here? A pattern site. All right, so pattern site being Etsy pattern, right? Where you can spin up your own website and it's a little shop on there that's tied to your Etsy listings and inventory, kind of syncs it up, and it's Etsy's nice way of saying, hey, we heard you that you want a website, and here's an easy way to do it that doesn't have the technical hassles of, going third party.
There you go. And it's connected to your shop already.
Absolutely. Which is one of the other things that, they and, I've definitely heard it too, a lot of sellers are saying it's really a pain to have, this inventory over here on my third-party website and on my Etsy site, because overnight both of them could sell and you might not have more than one. So, it's a good problem to have until you have that problem, and then you're like, all right, what do I do? So not really a good situation if that does happen. As far as, well, let's talk about the ease of use there. Pattern is actually pretty easy from everything I've seen. They make it, there are some edge cases where I've seen some people have some difficulties with domain names. I think it was going away from Pattern though, because people got wishy-washy when it first came out. I haven't heard much about it actually lately. Kind of a side note. About Pattern. It made a pretty big splash when it first started, but I haven't heard a lot of buzz about people going to or off of Pattern lately. But from everything I've heard, it's pretty easy to actually get going. So probably around a 3, because again, it's all within Etsy. They make things pretty easy to link up. You don't have to worry about a separate inventory tracking. You don't have to worry about separate payment options. Everything's kind of all together. And that's one of those other things that when you go off on their website, you've got to start thinking about, okay, how do I take payment? All that fun stuff. Pattern makes that easy. So we'll give that 3. But how much else is going to work? Well, whenever you have a website that's on its own, and so pattern is designed to kind of be on its own, your success is really going to be dictated by how much traffic you can send to it. Don't think about, hey, I'll just rank in Google or something like that. That is not a new idea. Everyone's trying to do that. Think more, what's another industry that or type of, because I mean, basically you're in a sales business once you do that, right? Like you're in like a direct sales. So if you said, hey, I'm going to sell insurance tomorrow, right? Like people aren't just going to start showing up at your door, knocking there to buy insurance, right? Like you're going to have
I
to
would.
go.
I am so sick of insurance. I'll be at your door. Send me your address. I'll be over.
All right. Well, Gordon will be there, but most people won't. In fact, they have so many different options. They're getting so many things already in their mailbox. Every time you go to the mailbox, look at all the junk mail in there. Something's be from insurance. Someone wants to lower your rate. You won't believe how low your insurance rate's going to be. The reason I'm rambling about that is because that's what it's kind of like when you have your own shop website out there. It's a really crowded market. You literally have to go out there and tell everybody every time you see them. You're hanging out at a kid's birthday party, and you're like, hey, and look at this bracelet I'm wearing. I just made this. Do you want to buy one? And that's kind of like what a pattern site is. All that, and we're going to put it about 2. That's where I was going with that. We're going to put it about 2 for will it work, because you have to put a lot of these other things in place to really, drive the success of that, if that makes sense.
Yep. Sure does.
All right, summarize that.
All right, and then the last one that we're pattern site. Pretty easy to do, but probably not a huge return.
There you go.
How's that? Good summary?
Yes.
All right. And then the last one that we're going to do as an example with you guys is to improve our photos. Now we know photos are crazy important. We know that, after being found in search, that is like the next thing you have to have teed up for somebody to have a great experience, and have them go ahead and make a purchase with you. Is you really need to make sure your photos are top notch. So we've got a card here for improving our photos. And my photos in my shop, let's see, they're okay, but I did them like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and they really need redone. I should kind of go through everything. They're all not consistent with one another. I use different backgrounds on them and stuff. And so to improve my photos, I'd really like to go through and just make everything look consistent so that when someone's in my shop, it looks like it's all kind of related to each other, and make sure they're all super high quality. Maybe some of the ones that I have in there now, they're kind of blurry or pixelated and not the best. So this, I'm a pretty okay photographer. I have nice equipment. It's just going to be the work for me of going through and actually taking photos of all my listings and figuring out, what I want to do for a background for each of them. I don't want to do a white background on every single thing. I kind of want to pick a background that's going to bring out the character of that specific item. And I ideally want to show people how they would use this item, and follow, the good ADA practices that my friends over at Marmalead have talked to me about in the entrepreneur copywriting course, since that also fits in with my photos. So it's not a crazy amount of work because I don't need to learn photography. I don't need to buy a bunch of equipment, but I do need to go through all of my listings and actually reshoot up at least 5 photos, probably more, so that I can pick the 5 best of all my listings and edit them and upload them. So for how hard is it to do it, or for how can I do this, I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a 3 also. It's not insurmountable. It's relatively easy. It's just going to be kind of, I guess it would go in the tedious category of a lot of work. I'm going to have to go through and do a bunch of listings. So I gave this guy a 3. Now, impact. Impact, I think, is going to be huge. I kind of talked before when we were talking about the promoted listings. I think my SEO is in a good spot. I'm ranking pretty okay for my keywords that I'm trying to target. And especially if I throw promoted listings on this, I'm expecting even more traffic to my listings. So I think the impact of better photos could be huge. I know a lot of people kind of fall off when they don't see really quality photos, or maybe my listings aren't getting as many clicks as they could be getting, even though I'm showing up on pages 1 and 2 for a lot of different terms. And I think that's probably the fault of my photos, that people aren't clicking on my listing. So I really think that if I go through and I improve my photos, it could have a massive impact on sales. And I'm going to be optimistic and put this guy at a 5 out of 5 for how far it's going to get me toward my goal and how much it's going to help me gain more sales in my shop. So that's going to put this guy kind of in the middle height wise, a little bit up to the top there, but all the way over on the right hand side because I gave it a 5 out of 5 for how much it's going to help. And now you can kind of see with all of these cards out here on our virtual board and your cards at home on your actual boards, how the spread is starting to shape up here. And what we're really trying to get at, and what you're really going to want to use this tool to do in helping figure out what's the best stuff to be working on. I've got so many different things. Just focus on the top right. Keep it really simple, right? That's the quadrant that you're going to get the biggest amount of return on your investment, whether it's money or time or whatever. Those are the things that are easier to do, and those are the things that are going to have they're going to help you towards your goal a whole lot. So now I know this is awesome, and I've got my whole list of things kind of sorted out, and I know that the best things for me really are the promoted listings and improving my photos. So all that time that I was planning on spending researching, how to start a blog and stuff, maybe I guess I just showed myself this really isn't the best use of my time, and I'd be better off setting up a little mini studio inside or outside so that I can start shooting some photos of my listings, and editing those and getting those into place. And that's really what this is about, is sorting through a bunch of different things and kind of just highlighting those things that end up being at the top right quadrant of your Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers.
I want to say something real quick on photos too. A lot of times shops will say, "Wow, do I really have to redo all my photos?" And well, no. The answer is no. You don't have to redo all your photos. Fortunately, you only have to redo or improve all the photos for the listings that you want to sell. So all the listings that you don't want to sell, don't worry about it.
Leave them alone.
Leave them alone.
Yeah.
Leave the poor lighting photos, or they're not quite sure what this is. And photos without context. That's fine. It's working. So keep doing that if that's the goal.
That's funny, man. I was wondering where you were going to go with that. I was about to answer, and then you answered, and I was like, well, what's he going to say now? So, yeah, that's a good call. Now we've also got some extra special bonus tips for you guys. So, hopefully, this process made sense of scoring everything in regards to how easy it is for you to do it and how much you think it's going to help, and then kind of throwing them all up so you can easily visually see where they all fall and against each other. That's kind of the key. So we've got some bonus tips. We've got 3 bonus tips here for you guys. And the first bonus tip is to use your gut. So kind of going back to what Richie was talking about with the scoring of these things, don't get super caught up in, a 1 versus a 2 or whether this is a 3 or a 4, or I don't know, is this really a 5? Like I don't know if I should put it a 5 or not. Don't get caught up in that kind of stuff and over analyzing things. Use your gut. Use what your feeling is telling you about how easy you think it'll be to do it, or how much this is going to help you towards your goal. And get the number on there and get it up on the wall. And even after you get it up on the wall, go ahead and feel free to move things around too. Like you don't have to be hard fixed to that number that you put on there. It's just a good starting point. So the bonus tip 1 is to use your gut. Otherwise, it's going to take you forever to get through all of your different tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole idea here is to be trying things out and to get through them. You have to use your gut because you don't know. If you already knew, then you wouldn't need to do this at all, because you'd just be able to look at it and say, okay, I see in the future this, particular idea I have is going to be the one that takes me to my goals and beyond, But you don't have that, so you just have to take your best guess as a gut. And which brings us to bonus tip 2, which is making sure you measure. So, the more you know about this stuff, and the more you have something to base your gut feelings on, then the more accurate, your gut feeling is going to get as well. So,
yep.
As we talked about those different cards, we talked about the social media stuff, and Gordon was saying, well, from what I've heard from other sellers and this and that, and these conversion rates, the more you know about that stuff, the better you can gauge what kind of idea it is. Now, if you have an idea that no one's ever done before, and you have zero background to it, well, then you don't have information, any data to go off of, and you're going to have to just use your gut feeling and be like, okay, I know that no one's ever done this. I know I have no real data to, to say this is going to work or not work, but I really think it's, it's going to make a big impact. And, maybe you're like, it's not as big as this, but it's still a 4. And I really think it's something I can do. Well, awesome. Do it. Go ahead. But measure so that when, you want to iterate on it or have other ideas that are similar to it, you can look back and say, okay, this is what I thought. This is what actually happened. And maybe you can improve it and make it get better.
Good point. Bonus tip number 3. So sometimes when you do this exercise, you'll find that things are going to get kind of clumped up. And so here we've got a sample picture to show you what that looks like. If we had kind of scrunched everything and we didn't use the full range of our scales and everything kind of ended up as like maybe a 2 or a 3, all clumped in the middle of our chart here. What do you do when this happens? Well, you're going to start to catch yourself as you start to get through some of these things and put them up on your board or on your wall or whatever. You're going to start to notice if things are all kind of in the same area. And when you catch this happening, or maybe you go through all of your tasks and they all end up super bunched up, what you're going to want to do to fix this is to take the card or the task that is, farthest to the left. Let's say it's a 2. Guess what? That's now a 0. All right. And the card that's farthest to the right, let's say that's a 3. Well, that's now a 5. Okay. So you're just going to kind of re-establish the scale you were putting on things, and to help you spread these things out. So when you do that, it's going to move things farther away from each other. Now, if you're like Richie and I, all of your ideas always end up in the top right quadrant, all clumped together there too, because we all know that those are the best things and they all belong up there. So if this happens to you, which it totally does every now and then, it's easy to get optimistic about things. You're just going to do the same thing. You're going to take your one that's the farthest to the left. In this case, it's a 3, right? It's our social media one there. Guess what? That's not a 3 anymore. That's now a 0. Is it really a 0? I don't know, but relative to the other ones that I have up there, it kind of has to be a 0 in order for everything to spread out and make sense to me. So there you go. That's another bonus tip for you for what to do if your stuff starts to get clumped up. You're going to have to change your scale. You're going to have to rename some of the numbers that you have on things, and something that was a 3 needs to become a 0, and something that was maybe a 4 gets pushed to a 5.
Yeah. Don't get too attached to ideas. You have to. We all have lots of bad ideas, right? You have to have a lot of bad ideas to surface the good ideas. So, just don't get too attached to them. Don't get emotionally attached to the idea, but, oh, no, I really want this to be the one. It's okay if it's not. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's just not a great idea today.
Yes. And I like one of the things you said there, Richie, too. Oh, no. All right. I'm going to need a box.
Yeah.
And some string. All right. So one of the things you said there, Richie, too, was don't get too emotionally attached to your ideas, which another thing kind of makes me want to call out here. That's a really good point. Now, keep in mind when you're scoring these things as to how much they're going to help you toward your goal. If there's something that you've already been working on, you've dumped a bunch of hours into it, don't let that emotionally affect how much you think it's going to help you. Don't feel like, oh my goodness, I've spent 40 hours working on this already. I just don't know what I'm going to do if this comes out and I really don't find or feel like it's going to help me towards my goal at all. Like, that's okay. You want to know that. Catch it now. Catch it before you spend 80 hours on it instead of the 40 that you've already spent. So that kind of goes into that notion of sunk costs that I think we've talked about before. And people kind of feel like, well, I've already spent so much time on it. I kind of need to keep going and finish it up. Don't let that stuff impact how you're scoring things. Don't let the emotion come into it. It's super hard to do, especially when they're your own ideas and your own tasks, and probably even harder when you've invested time and energy on these things. But you really need to try your best to think objectively and plot those things out in the most honest way that you can with yourself.
Yes, very important. And that goes along with things like domain name too. I already bought a domain name for 2 years. Okay, great. That doesn't mean you need to throw 100 hours into setting up your blog. On top of that, like it's okay.
Yeah.
You will do things that
Yeah.
don't
Just
work.
renew it. It'll be there in another 2 years.
Exactly. Hey, good to hold on to regardless. It's not going to hurt anything. You know, and if you're like, oh, but I spent the money. Well, great. Now no one else can take it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So there is a win there. But yeah, I know it's hard to walk away from things once you start them and you get some time, effort, money into them. But you don't. Another way to explain the sunk cost is to not throw good money after bad. Right? If it's already broken, don't throw more money at it and waste that money
Yeah.
too. You've already wasted $5. Don't waste 10.
Yep.
Kind of like you're at a vending machine and the candy bar gets stuck, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna do it again, and it's
Now I
stuck
get two.
again. Now now it's like jammed up. Because ideally you get two, but now like it's jammed up, and you see it, and you're like, all right, I'm pretty sure if I throw another dollar in here, it's just gonna get all caught up in the log jam anyway. And you're like, but I already spent $3. So I'm just going to, every dollar in my wallet I'm putting in this thing, doesn't matter how big that jam is, because one of these is going to knock it out. But then it doesn't. And then you're just very upset.
And it's funny you do that to me again, because that also reminds me of a Mitch Hedberg joke, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing. So Google Mitch Hedberg vending machine, and you guys can hear that joke. It's a good one.
I love how those keep coming up.
Oh man, I know, it's kind of funny. All right, so there you guys have it. That's the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers. It will hopefully give you all of the answers you've ever hoped for, and it, more importantly, it's going to help you make sure you're focusing on the right things, keeping you honest with yourself, and making sure that the time, your time, which time is precious, making sure that you're spending it on the things that matter most. And it all has to go back towards that goal that you have at the very beginning. So make sure as you're scoring things, it all relates back to that goal. If you guys do this, if you do this activity, we would love to see how your boards turned out and how your wall turned out with all your sticky notes, or your permanent marker written on your painted bedroom wall. That would be fantastic. So if you want to take a picture of your work and throw it up into our Facebook group, Richie, Kevs, and I would love to take a look at that. So, yeah.
One tip: sticky notes will fall off of painted walls after some time. So if you do all this, and walk away from it overnight or something like that, you will probably come back and find your sticky notes on the floor. So do this in a session. Take a picture of it with your camera, your camera phone, something, so that you have it, and then just understand it might not fall off, right? But in our experience, they typically do. So just to avoid any.
That's upset. A good point. Pro tip number 4 that we didn't include: take a photo. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
And if you do find your sticky notes falling off your painted walls, just go ahead and get some sandpaper and take the paint off your wall.
There you go. That paint wasn't helping anyway.
You're going to want to damp wipe it down after you do that. Otherwise, the dust is going to make them fall off still.
That's a good point.
Pro tip 5.
Will that even work, though? You did take the paint off your wall, with the sticky notes really stick?
I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Email Kevin at marmalead.com. Let him know.
He'll come repaint your wall for you.
Totally. But we get to choose the color.
Yeah. Yeah. And while he's there, he'll buy some insurance.
That's probably, yeah. There you go. There's an incentive.
There you have it, guys. That is the Magic Quadrantilizer of Answers. So again, let us know how it goes. Hit us up at success@marmalead.com. We'd love to hear your stories about how it went for you and any questions you might have about this process. It's probably kind of a new one to you guys. Like Richie and I, before we heard about this, we hadn't really ever done anything like it. So it was pretty eye-opening the first couple of times we actually went through this process, and we really like it now. It's really helpful. But yeah, let us know how it goes, and if you guys have any questions. Do you have any magic closing thoughts about the Quadrantilizer of Answers, Richie?
sure if I have any magic closing thoughts, but I will say that, like I said in the beginning, everybody, no matter who they are, goes through this, and I go through this in different phases. I think I have things kind of like tasks organized and stuff like that, and have the most important one surface to the top. But things happen, life happens. Next thing you know, you have tasks everywhere. They're scattered all over the place. You're just cranking through things on a daily basis, but sometimes you're like, am I getting anywhere? You just kind of get that feeling sometimes. And when that happens, I think that's a really good time to come back to a system like this, the Magic Quadrantilizer, and put those tasks through it and really say, okay, I have been dreading doing this task for a long time. It's taking a toll on me. Is it important? Is it really one I have to do, or am I actually just using my mental space and procrastinating this thing because somewhere deep inside I know it's not really worth doing? So I would say take regular temperature checks of what you have on your plate and make sure that your time is time well spent.
Yeah, I like that. Tip number 6, rinse and repeat.
There you go. Rinse and repeat often.
Yeah, it's good.
At least every full moon.
Yeah, oh yeah, at least. Yeah. In fact, I mean, that's a good, just put it on your calendar every time there's a full moon. Go to your moon calendar and, oh, hey, I need to quadrantilize my stuff. Yeah, we'll see how that works out.
It'll work out.
Yeah, I think it will. I think if you go through the process, even if the first time you do it, you end up with an issue like things are clumped up, or you don't have really clear answers to what you're trying to figure out. The more you do it, the more you're going to enjoy it, and the more you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, practice makes perfect.
And on that bombshell, we will see you guys next time on Etsy Jam.